English translation, 28th contact. Friday, 27th June, 1975, 10:47 HR's thought transmission contact.
There have been some important things we need to convey to you. These are the facts of some of the events in your group that need to be discussed here. Our station manager wants to get in contact with you and give you the necessary facts. His name is Quetzal. I have told you about him before, and he is the highest leader of all our stations in this system. Are you ready to hear him?
Of course, why not? But what have I done that the great boss wants to get in touch with me?
It is about a matter that happened in your group, as I was saying. So it is not your fault. But now listen to the voice of Quetzal.
My sincere greetings, dear friend. Recently, we have collected various uncontrolled thoughts from members of your group, and we have become aware of some factors, which I am sorry to have to discuss now, because through the excessively strong thought impulses of some persons, we have endeavored to address these factors and found that despite our provisions transmitted by Sim-Ya-Se, our wishes are not being acted upon. First and foremost, this is the factor of the book, or rather the writing, by Gloria Lee. Sim-Ya-Se explained very clearly with regard to this writing that in its distribution, an appropriate and purposeful guidance should be prepared and attached to the writing, because this is absolutely necessary for the clarification. But as we now established during our investigations, Hans Jakob had already begun the spreading of this writing, without the addition of the aforementioned guidance. This now throws an evil aspect on the truth, and awakens false impressions and new heresies in many human beings. Sim-Ya-Se explained in well-understandable words that the writing is the pure product of the author and has no connection with any extraterrestrial life forms. The writer, very imaginative and influenced by various factors, was subject to a self-deception which she unconsciously evoked herself as a result of excessive imagination. The writing itself is so valuable that it is able to give human beings of average consciousness-based standing of your world a certain impression and possibilities in various relationships, although it only seems interesting for already enlightened and knowledgeable Earth humans, but disappears in complete insignificance. Gloria Lee, as the author of the script is called, has never been in contact with any life forms that surpassed her own norm. The whole work is merely a product of her own thought processes and fantasies, which she has, in part, very skillfully combined in combinations, and was consequently able to name future provisions, but which could not apply in different phases because she had assumed wrong premises. It is very unfortunate that the preparation and settlement of an expedient guidance concerning this writing was not observed, and that the person spreading the writing acted arbitrarily. This continues to endanger the truth very much, and new untruths are spread. As I have already explained, we devoted ourselves specifically to Hans Jakob after recognizing these facts, and we noticed that in certain respects he is very reluctant to be taught certain things as a result of sectarian religious faith. The thoughts and volitional manifestations in this person also have a strong tendency towards arbitrariness and towards unjustified and sectarian doubts. Thus, we also recognized that Hans Jakob was not able to process certain offered parts of the teaching and was subject to doubts. Because this teaching of the truth is completely new to him, and because he is still very strongly caught in the old and unreal teachings of his religion. We do not appreciate the lack of trustworthiness of this Hans Jakob, because his constant doubting and skepticism of the most important teaching of the Spirit and his arbitrariness cannot be reconciled with our task. Because if we enact determinations, then we have our reasons, so thus if we make determinations, then they should also be followed. Even if we ourselves have not yet reached perfection and are forced to make mistakes, we have nevertheless evolved to such an extent that we are superior to the human beings of the earth in many forms. That is why we only adopt determinations that are anchored and justified in absolute logic. So when we enact determinations, we know very well what we are doing and what purposes they serve. But if they are violated, they become meaningless and worthless, because the way of the truth cannot be walked upon and not followed through disregard. We cannot therefore allow our provisions to be disregarded and everything to be called into question. It is unacceptable that your members should simply ignore our policies and act at their own discretion in these matters. We only enact determinations where they are necessary and should be followed. But where we leave everything to our own discretion, we can also act at our own discretion. According to natural and creational laws, everything has its own ironclad order, and this is also to be followed by the earth human. In this respect, we are the leading and instructive factors in relation to earth humans, which is why it is not acceptable for individuals to rely on their illogicality and not to act according to enacted regulations. Even if their illogicality does not allow them to recognize our logic, this does not mean a carte blanche of arbitrariness for them. We are only able to present the spiritual teaching and other things to the earth human in a useful manner when we act according to our determinations. Illogical arbitrariness, however, damages our task to a great extent. In all technological stages of development, we are 300-500 years ahead of the earth human according to earthly time calculation, while the development of consciousness has progressed about 25 million years further, which should be taken into account by all. Therefore, if an earth human, who is behind us in this period of development, is of the opinion that his or her illogical ignorance exceeds our logical knowledge, then this corresponds to a selfish megalomania, as you like to call it. It should now be clearly stated that we cannot get involved in this behavior of individual persons. In further cases of such incidents, we would have to enact a provision that such persons be completely excluded from our interests. We cannot let them jeopardize our task. We do not pay attention to the ingratitude for our honest efforts, but only to the great danger of our task. If we adopt special provisions, then they should also be complied with. Otherwise, the offenders will become useless in relation to the performance of the task. Fulfilling the task requires a harmonious collective, but not degenerations Ausartungen. Ausartungen, getting very badly out of control of the good human nature. If an individual disregards a law or recommendations, he or she not only causes himself or herself personal harm, but also affects others. This is the law of the spiritual power and of the consciousness power, which spread their swinging waves to all life forms. Through a consciously committed guilt, wide waves are thrown, which also hit innocent people with their beating powers. This is a law of nature in order to create unity in cooperation. In the matter of Hans Jacob, I have tried to gain personal insights and found out that in him there is a strong urge for high-handedness, which also inclines him to represent traditional irrational teachings. Therefore, it is very difficult for him to be taught the truth, and he doubts its correctness. Many old irrational teachings are very powerful in him and hinder a progress to the truth. He should therefore be given the advice to make very intensive efforts to promote the new teaching of the Spirit and to take a positive view of it. He should therefore address himself personally to our contact person for appropriate discussions, who will be able to give him exhaustive information, for his Billy's knowledge is the knowledge of the truth and of prophetic greatness. The teaching will not be easy, but of appropriate use. But his effort must also be rooted in fighting his own power and following rules that we have issued. If he does not do so, then we will have to do without his cooperation, as undesirable as it would be for us, because if he thinks in the true forms of the truth, then he embodies a very valuable link in the chain of our task. Another point is to mention concerning the contact reports, because as we have brought to light, you are finally making an effort to prepare the reports for dissemination. There is, however, a factor which is not in our favor, because we have had very extensive discussions about this recently. According to some of your members, the reports should only be partially worked out and distributed, whereby all personal things, etc., should be removed. We, for our part, cannot agree to all things with this. Our decision, therefore, is that only extremely internal and private matters should be kept secret, but that the reports should otherwise be circulated letter by letter as they are, according to fixed wording. But this also includes all personal points, which must not be omitted from informational importance. The reports are only valuable and complete if they are reproduced word for word in all matters of importance to the public, and if they contain all the relevant factors. This is a provision which is based on very precise considerations and which is based on logic. All personal and other things, which are not mentioned in the reports, and which are not allowed or should not be spread, were unfortunately not kept out of the reports from the beginning. All available contact reports contain thus not only exactly what is to be submitted and explained to the terrestrial humanity. We cannot consider it unacceptable to omit any facts, information, statements, corrections, or other parts of the discussion. But even in this relationship, the necessary truth must still be spread and taught out loud, even if certain instructive things for and in respect of individual persons are very unpleasant for them. But this applies not only to some of your members, but also to ourselves, because we too often make unrecognized mistakes. These are the relevant facts that I had to mention today. We now expect a detection of the mentioned errors and their correction. We do not like it very much when we have to deal with the same facts all the time. Once we make a statement or make a provision, it should be true enough. It should really not be the case that all things have to be repeated and discussed several times. In this regard, we have also ordered Simyase to refrain from any kind of repetition of a once declared factor in the future. Because what has once been explained or discussed does not need any further explanation. Anything else is not only very time-consuming but also illogical and superfluous. In no way do we try to exercise dictatorial measures or to impose our will or our knowledge on Earth humans. We have only taken on the self-imposed task of transmitting the teaching of the truth and some other things. Whoever wants to accept and acknowledge this teaching can do so according to his or her own decision, and whoever wants to reject it, rejects it. The recognizers, however, must be aware that only certain lines are able to maintain an order, so that special regulations and instructions must be followed, and that even from their side, certain aids are not indispensable. Only in this manner can the laws and recommendations be fulfilled and the ironclad order maintained.